Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be partnering today with Texas Workforce Solutions, Deborah Irwin. She is the Student Hireability Navigator for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm not sure if she's going to be joining us or not, but she may have some things that she'll kind of chat about their program. We've got some slides that we're going to discuss as well. So today, a couple of things from a housekeeping perspective. What you need to know that you are in webinar mode. So what that means is we can't see you or hear you, but we do know that you're there. Today's webinar is being recorded, and following the webinar today, you will get an email. You're going to get a copy of all of the slides with all the links. So you don't have to take notes on every single thing that we say. You'll have all the links, so you don't have to jot those down. You're also going to get the recording of today's session as well if you want to listen to it again or share it with somebody else. So Consolidated Planning Group, who we are, what we do. We are a holistic special needs planning firm. We do a lot of webinars on a pretty regular basis. So if you've joined us before for some of our topics, we're glad you're back. If this is your first time, we're certainly glad you're here. A little bit about me. I'm a mom to 4. I have 2 kids with special needs, one that has fully transitioned and one that is in the midst of transitioning. And a lot of these webinars have just simply been born from the simple fact of sometimes our life is just difficult, and navigating these things as all the stuff that we're supposed to know as parents, supposed to do, and what, more importantly, what we're not supposed to do to not mess things up for our loved ones with special needs is why we do what we do on these webinars. So we do have a YouTube channel. Our past webinars live on that YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it for free, and you can kind of peruse any topics that might be relevant to you to, as it relates to the journey that you're on right now. As it relates to Consolidated Planning Group and what we do and what does it mean when we say we're a holistic special needs planning firm, we're a little bit different. There's a lot of confusion on the different hats that a special needs advisor wears versus a special needs attorney. And the truth is as you're navigating things for your loved one with a disability, you need both. So the special needs attorney, they're the ones that are going to really help you with your legal documents. These are things like guardianship, special needs trust, partial guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, things like that. And they're the paper. We say they're the paper, the legal documents. You got to have them. But when it comes to the future care of your loved one with special needs, it comes down to funding. And there's a lot of questions that surround funding. How do we fund future care for our loved ones and make sure that they maintain their eligibility for state and federally funded programs? What is the amount that I need to set aside for that? How do I plan for this? And so we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors. We're also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are on the money side. We're the money side. We're funding that special needs trust. How do we fund it properly and maintain that eligibility? And we are also able to do those future care cost estimates to determine what exactly for your loved one is needed to be set aside. So if you haven't done that or haven't had that done in the past, that may be something that you want to consider. And also we can help with ABLE accounts as well. So today, what we are talking about is educational options after high school for special needs families. And so, this presentation, there's actually a lot of slides on it, and we're not going to go through one by one, line by line, every single slide, because a lot of the slides that we have out there today have a lot of links for you to be able to use and research and do some homework on yourself. So that way you don't have to take all the notes. We want to answer as many questions as we can today. So if you have questions, don't be shy. Probably somebody else has them too. So put them in the chat box and we'll get to as many as possible. And also from a planning perspective, if you're planning your lunch hour, this webinar is scheduled from 12 to 1 and we will be done by 1 o'clock. Okay, so when it comes to planning, for post-high school options, for special needs, there's a lot of different paths that you can go down. There's the traditional path that we've all heard of, and community college or university degree programs, but there's a lot of other paths. And so for a lot of the families that we work with, one common thing that we hear on a pretty regular basis is, at age 18, my child isn't there yet. I don't think he or she is ready. I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, I believe in the direction and where they're going, but they're just not quite there yet. So this is where, we talk about setting those realistic expectations. Is it a traditional path or a non-traditional path that maybe leads later to the traditional path? So keep an open mind, consider all those options. There's a lot of options out there. We know about 18 plus programs, transition programs that are both public or private pay, trade school, community options. There's a lot of programs, that may have a certificate program or a license as opposed to a degree, a 2-year or a 4-year degree. Of course, there's the university degree programs, and these are ones that we're going to want to look at. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in a little bit, but where we're going to kind of talk about the accommodations that might be necessary for your student for their overall success with higher education. Think about a reduced course load. This is when I say keep an open mind and consider all the options. Maybe your student can try their hand at one course and see how they do. The community college and the universities all have programs, and forgive me for not knowing the name like right off the bat, but it's basically how to be a university or college student 101. It's basically the class. And it's actually a 4-credit class. And that course is just in general to talk to them about study habits and what it takes to be successful and how to not mess things up with higher education. So it's a good course. One of my kids took, actually both my kids took that course. And so I think that is a good introductory course. Another thing that you guys can be thinking about is dual credit. There is, dual credit is a such thing with the community colleges all across the state of Texas. Where your student, while they're still in high school, might be able to try their hand with a dual credit course and see how they do before they graduate from high school. So that's something also to consider. Usually your guidance counselor at the school that you're going to, especially if it's a public school, will have more information about dual credit. And then also all of those community colleges. So if your guidance counselor doesn't have information for this at the public high school, all of the community colleges have a liaison that works for the community college that is in charge of dual credit. And so you can get a lot of information by just researching that online and also reaching out to that person that is specifically, tied to that program at the community college. Thinking about living at home versus on campus, whether or not your student, sometimes some of our students have medical needs or for lack of a better word, apparatuses that might not make them a great roommate on the college level. A lot of these colleges and universities and dorms, they definitely have roommate programs, very few dorms or single rooms. But just know that if your student could live, live in a dorm and they need a private room because of a medical condition or a disability, there is such accommodation available on the college level for a private room for a student with a disability that needs a private room because of their disability. So just know that that's a thing that you can definitely check into. And one thing with that, I would like to mention what I learned when we were doing this was that the colleges are a little bit different on how they handle that. Some colleges won't charge you the private room rate if you need it because of an accommodation, and some will. So you might want to ask about that and kind of see how that works. Because obviously, if there's 2 or 4, roommates in a room, it's going to be a lot cheaper than a single room. So another thought is, what about if they're going to work? If you have a student, you say, hey, they're not there yet. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. There are a lot of programs for our kids and loved ones with disabilities that are designed to close the gap on their impediments to employment and get them to work, and not underemployment, but gainful employment. So think about the Workforce Commission, vocational rehab. You may have heard of it called VR before. Again, most of the public schools have a VR counselor that is tied to the school, so you can apply for VR through Start My VR. It's just a website that you can go to, and you can apply for VR on your own, but they do have those counselors boots on the ground. Also with the Student Hireability Navigator that we're partnered with today, there are other programs for our kids with disabilities. You may have heard of SEAL, which is Summer Earn and Learn. And this program, I want to say that it was like basically $10 an hour, I think 20 hours a week for 12 weeks during the summer or something along those lines. But it's basically, they help pair your student with an employer, with a job. You know, they're learning as they're going, but they're getting paid as they go. So that's the Summer Earn and Learn. And then also they have another program, and we'll talk further about it, the PRES, the Pre-Employment Training Services. Guys, these services start as young as 14, so 14 to 22. So you can start these services. So you're kind of, you know, it's a process. It's a learning process. It's a learning curve. So if the sooner you start this process, the earlier, the more skills they're going to gain, and be closer to, you know, ready to work when it comes time to work. And so obviously thinking about a career path, ideal work settings, you know, considering whatever their disability may be. But we always say they are where they are, they aren't behind. And so I think our society is always looking at comparisons and comparing our kids to others. And Facebook does a really good job of posting all the greatness of everybody else's kids, and not, you know, what the shortcomings are. But just remember to meet your student where they are. It is okay in this race of life, and however long your student it takes for them to go to college or get a certificate or get a license or whatever it is that they're going to do. If this process is delayed 2 years or 4 years, there are so many people with disabilities that have not only degrees, but advanced degrees and MBAs and PhDs. And so it is possible, and there are a lot of programs out there that we're going to discuss as well. So some of the things we talked about, kind of some of the transition, day and transition programs. So if you're a parent where you're saying, hey, we're not there yet, we think we're going to get there, this is where you're going to want to think further about a transition program. Maybe your child has aged out of the 18 plus program. Maybe they're still not there. That's okay. There are a lot of, you know, programs all across the state that are available, and we do have an outside list of these programs, and I think there's some links in this email as well. But these are some examples. So we want to talk about what are the traits that the kids need to have to be successful on the college or university level. And this isn't just for kids with disabilities. And if you start like Googling and looking at the failure rates of kids in college, it's high, you know, and you can look at the, you know, the average graduation rates, the 4-year graduation rates, and some of them are 6 years and some of them are 8 years. It's long, right? But there are 6 straight traits students with learning disabilities need to succeed. And I think that these, again, like I said, they go for our neurotypical kids too. So self-awareness. So, you know, self-awareness in their strengths and weaknesses, both in academic and non-academic, maybe social areas is important. They need to have kind of that proactivity, little, you know, a little drive behind them. You know, as parents, we are, I hate to use the word helicoptering, but sometimes our kids with disabilities, we're helicoptering a little bit when maybe we're closing the gap for some of the deficits that they have. But a lot of this, you know, for their own success, I mean, it's a whole different world when they move from high school and move into the college world, and they got to have some get up and go and some, you know, some proactive traits to them. So, you know, we're also talking about perseverance. I call it the stick to itness, right? You know, things aren't always going to go perfect, but kind of over around it through. Do they overcome? Do they make it happen? How are they in goal setting? And so maybe some of our students still need help in this area, and that's okay. You can still partner with them in this, but goal setting and kind of moving themselves forward as it relates to their vision for their future is something else to think about. They want to be able to have present and effective, social supports in place, and know how to effectively use those supports that are out there. And those supports might be with parents and family, and they also might be supports that are available through the community, such as VR, Summer Earn and Learn, and PREETs, or it might be supports that are available through the college or university, such as the Office of Disability, accommodations that might be out there. And then there's all kinds of emotional support that is also available on the college level as well. So of course, the emotional coping strategies and knowing where to get help if they need it is also important. The thing is college is stressful. It can be a lot of fun, but there's work involved. It's not just a picnic. And so there can be a lot of emotional kind of roller coaster rides for our kids that have never lived outside the home, our kids that are feeling like they're drowning because maybe they have too many course credit hours. Like I said, so maybe it's 2 hours, maybe it's 2 courses, maybe it's one course, but the society tells us that a full load on the college level is 12 credit hours. Well, if this is going to send your loved one into an emotional tailspin, that's a bad idea, and so we should try our hand with something different. So these are just a few of the things that we like to talk about. So I think that I'm going to advance this. Okay, so educational option list. So these are some of the programs at Consolidated Planning Group. We always kind of just provide the disclaimer. We don't work for any of these programs. They don't work for us. These are just programs that we have come across, across the state that have good programs that are geared towards individuals with disabilities, or they might be on this list because they have a good Office of Disability and working with you and establishing accommodations for your loved ones with special needs. So all of these have links in there so you can check them out. I think one of the things that you need to be aware of as you're thinking about some of these programs is the availability and how many seats that they have available, how many students can they take, because some of their ratios are really small, so they might only have 4 openings. Others have a lot more openings than, but the important thing to know is to check these programs out. Think about the ones that you might be interested in, check the prices, check when the applications open, when they close, and you might want to apply for more than one. So if you're applying to a program that doesn't take very many students on an annual basis, it might be a good thing to apply for more than one. So at least if your choice number 1 doesn't come through, then you have, maybe a backup plan for choice number 2 or choice number 3. That's kind of what I did. Again, we're going to plan for the best and hope that you get what you want, but having a close second or a third that you are equally interested in that you think could meet your child's needs is also a good thing, because that's going to prevent you from delaying a semester or delaying a year if you don't want to. So here are some other places they're aware of. Some of them are, post-high school educational options, but they might not be like for a degree program. They might have a transition program, and others of them are specific programs through the university. So again, we've just got some additional links here. Think College, we're going to talk about that in just a second, but Think College is a good website that is a good place to check out some of the other options that are available all across the U.S., not just in Texas, for our loved ones with disabilities. Okay, so yeah, so basically with Think College, there's over 309 colleges and universities that offer post-secondary education programs for students with intellectual disabilities. There's all kinds of information on this website, so this is one that should be your friend, and check it out. Now, admittedly, a lot of parents, and you may be in a different category, and you might be attending, from outside of the state of Texas, and that's fine too. But a lot of the families that we chat with, that have kids with disabilities, especially if they're trying their hand with college for the first time, they have zero interest in their child going out of state. And then other families say, yeah, this is what is going to promote independence. We definitely want them to go out of state. So, I mean, there is really no right or wrong answer, but I am the dip the toe in kind of girl, where if you have questions about their ability to survive or to make it in college, to dip your toe in and kind of start slowly as opposed to jumping in with both feet. That's just a thought. And again, that's true. And I just want to also say that sometimes the first semester from college is a learning curve, and it maybe didn't go well. Maybe the wheels were off the bus. Maybe things, learning didn't go well, grades weren't good, attendance wasn't good, maybe, it got caught up with the wrong crowd and partying and all that kinds of stuff. So whether you have a kid with disabilities or you have a neurotypical kid, that is something that can and does happen on a pretty regular basis, that first semester just kind of goes to heck in a handbasket. But don't give up on that. I mean, I wouldn't do that perpetually over and over, especially, the cost of college and things like that. But just know that learning curve is steep. And I know that we experience that with my kids as well. And sometimes it's just, really navigating your new life and how it is on the university system and how a professor is, and how sometimes professors do a power check to that first test. And that first test, everybody bombs because they just want you to know who's in charge. And now you know how that professor works, and then you kind of adapt and move forward from there. And those are all things as parents that we learned if we went through the college, basic, experience, and that's things that they're going to have to learn too. Unfortunately, they can't learn from our mistakes. So this lady, this is JODI GLOU. We have done a webinar with her in the past, so you can search that on our YouTube channel. She's an independent educational consultant, and she's the founder of Custom College Consulting. Again, she doesn't work for us. We don't work for her. We are aware of her and that she does a great job, but she really works with students who have learning challenges as they seek to find their best fit in post-secondary education. So she partners with you, the family. She's a paid-for service. You would hire her, but she is aware of all the programs all across the U.S. She's not domiciled here in Texas, but she is aware of the programs. She actually goes and tours those programs. So when you hire her, basically what she does is she really gets in the weeds with you on what's important, what's not important, what's important, how does your child function, what are those deficits, and she's going to make recommendations to where what are some places that you maybe should consider that might really be a great fit for your student. So if you don't have a ton of extra time on your hands to do all this navigating yourself, I do recommend hiring a consultant. I would say hire carefully. I've done some research on this in the past. Most of the college, there's a ton of college consultants out there, a ton of people that call themselves college consultants, and they actually dabble in that. That's not what they do full-time. This is what she does full-time. So I would hire somebody that does it full-time. And I would also be vigilant of other college consultants out there, because most of them don't have any background in special needs. And they're going to talk to you about the Office of Disability basically and only. And I don't think that they're going to provide the value that you may need. If you have a child with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, JODI's going to know about these campuses. If they have physical disabilities, like for instance, one of my kids has, gait issues and balance and equilibrium issues. Well, as a result of that, Texas State wasn't a good campus for us. Beautiful campus, lots of steps, lots of hills, lots of catastrophes waiting to happen for us from a physical perspective. So that's an example. So, you know, there could be any number of criteria that you have, and everybody's criteria is going to be a little bit different for their student, and she can help with that. So, so the CLE, this is the college living experience, not the learning experience, the college living experience. They have, so this is where your students live there. They live at the college living experience. I believe there's one in Austin, and they have several of them all across the U.S. So this is where your child may attend a public university in that city, or they may attend the community college in that city, but they live at the college living experience. And this is for individuals with disabilities. They learn, they get support from academics and a career perspective, but they are also learning independent living skills and social development. So this is a good program that's worth checking into. But one thing that you do need to be aware of this program, it's not necessarily cheap. I don't want to say it's like, you know, horrible, but it's not cheap, and you would pay for the program as well as the tuition for the community college or the public university or private university that your student is going to. One thing that I wanted to mention, I don't think I ever mentioned this, but the don't be afraid. You know, everybody tells you don't look at private universities. They are ridiculously expensive. And it is true, they can be pretty expensive. But a lot of the private universities have some really great programs for individuals with special needs. They have lower class sizes. Like, you know, for a lot of our students, you know, being in a class size with 200 or 300 in the class might not be a good fit for them. Maybe you're looking for a smaller campus, one that's a little bit easier to navigate. Some of those private schools are definitely worth looking at. And then also, you know, from an admissions perspective, a lot of the private schools, they do have discounts. They're trying to attract out-of-state students. So a lot of the private schools do have some pretty hefty discounts as it relates to out-of-state students, and then even just on the local level as well. But just don't discredit them, because some of the private schools could be a good fit for your student. Okay, Bloom Consulting. This is somebody I just always mention, and this is one I would say just go to their website, because they got a lot going on. Bloom Consulting, they often partner with vocational rehab and workforce solutions, and they do vocational evaluation. So if you're thinking that your student, maybe they need to go to work, or you say, gosh, you were talking about my student's impediments to employment, and I don't really even fully know what those impediments to employment are. There is something called a vocational evaluation that you can get done. Bloom Consulting is somebody that can do that for you. It is something that you can private pay and get a vocational evaluation done, but it is also something that can be requested through VR. So if your student is in VR, this may be an assessment that could be requested through their services of VR and paid for by VR as opposed to out of pocket. But this Campus Connections program, so the reason I told you to go to their website is they've got a group home, they've got help in multiple states, not just Texas. They are domiciled in Texas, but they have a Campus Connection wraparound program that is really designed to support your student with a disability and kind of really empower them to problem solve, and they're basically getting a coach and a mentor and some help in navigating some of these things. So they're not always having to call mom and dad or get mom and dad to solve their problems. So this is one of the programs that we think is affordable, this wraparound program at $1,000 per month. That, you know, if this is what it takes for your student to succeed at the college or university level, this is a program that's just at least worth checking into. And I know that Bloom Consulting, I'm sure you can see this on their website as well, but they do webinars as well. So they may have a specific webinar specifically about this program. And I do know that they're pretty connected with Sam Houston State University on this program. I'm sure they're connected with other universities across Texas, but I do know that there is a definitive connection with them in the Office of Disability at Sam Houston State. Okay, So workforce solutions, and it just depends on where you are in the state, who your student hireability navigator is. We've got Anna Clues, she's the greater Houston area. And then of course we have Deborah Irwin, who is the Dallas-Fort Worth. So when we send the presentation, we are going to send the contact information for Deborah Irwin, but basically any one of these ones you call, if you call the wrong one, they're going to connect you to the one in your area. So this is what I was kind of talking a little bit more about, the training that our students can get ages 14 to 22, the training that they could get, that PREETS. Everybody throws around these acronyms, PREETS, Pre-Employment Training Services is what that stands for. And then of course the Summer Earn and Learn program was something that I mentioned before. So I am going to kind of power through on this. So this just kind of just talks about a little bit more about what the Workforce Solutions and Workforce Commission can do. They work together, and it is confusing for a lot of people on who does what, because they are siloed, but they kind of work together. So Workforce Solutions and Workforce Commission are two different organizations. Basically the Workforce Commission that's doing the vocational rehab, the VR program, and then it's the solutions, Workforce Solutions, that's doing the PREETS and the Summer Earn and Learn. So you're just going to want to educate yourself on that. And again, you might be able to get some additional information from your school. What I will tell you is we have entire webinars on this topic. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can find that webinar on our YouTube channel and kind of go through that. So when we start talking about, education, we've talked about a little bit about money for a second, because let's face it, it's no small thing if you got a kid that's going to college, especially if you got multiple kids in college at the same time, which many families do. But how do we pay for all this? If it's $25,000, if it's $50,000, we haven't seen too many above 75 with everything all in, but some of them can get pretty pricey on some of the schools. But how do we pay for that? So the next slides that we're going to be going over are going to be talking about funding. So the first things first, what we hear all the time is we're not going to complete the FAFSA because we make too much money and we're simply not going to qualify for anything. So mark that down as that is false information, and whoever told you that is wrong. You should go ahead and complete the FAFSA. Each year, the FAFSA opens up on October 1st for the following year. You're going to want to complete this even if you make too much money. And the truth is, maybe you do make too much money, and maybe you're not going to qualify for financial aid from that perspective. But many of the scholarships that are out there, which are many, require that the FAFSA is completed. So if you don't complete the FAFSA, then your student is automatically not going to qualify for any of the scholarships out there. So the other note, word to the wise, if you haven't completed the FAFSA and you thought it would be a good idea to tell your student to complete it, a horrible idea. Okay, so FAFSA is convoluted and it's confusing, and it's asking all of your financial information. It is also going to ask you to connect to the IRS to connect your tax returns. So basically there's a login for your student and there's a login for you, but you're going to need to be, need to be the one that's completing the FAFSA and answering the questions. Most of the questions, your student is basically not going to know anything about it. So if you tell your student to complete the FAFSA and they didn't, they basically can't. You got to partner with them on that. Okay, so scholarships. So some of the scholarships, so I guess I got to circle back just a little bit from a perspective from one of my kids with a disability. We started early and we're thinking about how and what are we going to do to get her college paid for? How can we leverage the scholarships out there? What do we need to do? And so as we sat down, we were thinking, okay, so wait a second. She's smart. But she's not going to be in the top 5 or 10% of the class. She doesn't play music and she doesn't play sports. So that eliminates any scholarships that way, right? So what could we do? And what we learned, so if you have younger students and that you're thinking about this now, is what we learned is that there are a lot of scholarships out there for students that give back to their community. And I don't mean they volunteer at church. I mean meaningful volunteer hours, significant volunteer hours in a few organizations over the course of their 4 years of college. And you get your kids volunteering, there are some significant scholarships out there that are worth your attention. So what is your story? Do you have a powerful story? Does your student have a powerful story? Are they an overcomer? What has happened in their life? Have they gone through a divorce? Has there been a death of a loved one? What have they overcome from a disability perspective to be where they are and be able to be going to college? Be thinking about that story and know how to tell that story when it comes to their essays. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But you're going to want to research your deadlines, and I always say keep a spreadsheet. Make a spreadsheet of some of these deadlines. They're all different. Okay, so it would just be nice if all of the scholarships opened up and closed at the same time. It would be nice if all of the college applications opened up and closed at the same time. But the truth is, they don't. For my inconvenience, I thought it would just be so easy, the easy button. They're all open on this date. FAFSA all opens on October 1st, but if you're looking at multiple schools, you're going to have to know their dates, and obviously that is true for scholarships as well. So one place that we can obviously fund college is a 529 college savings plan. Some of you may already have those in place, and some of you may not. So the 529 savings plan, if you have one, obviously is a great source where you can fund college with that and not be taxed or penalized for paying for a qualified college expense. Another place that you can pay for college is out of an ABLE account. So if you have an ABLE account, which might be a 529A for ABLE, it can also pay for college. An ABLE account can pay for many things for your student with a disability, but college is also one of them. So sometimes we have families that are unsure. They have a 529 college savings plan for their student with a disability. Maybe they didn't know if their child would go to college or not. Maybe sometimes along the way it's become apparent that college is not a right fit for the student. Families can convert $16,000 a year from their college savings plan to an ABLE account for that child. And the reason that might be a good idea is because the ABLE account is much less restrictive of what you can pay for out of it. There's a lot more things that you can pay for out of the ABLE account. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So, and again, we talked about vocational rehab. And just so you know, if your student's in the VR program, VR may be able to provide financial support if it's in line with the goals established within the plan for the individual to find competitive work. So there could be funding for classes or courses if it's in line with the goal in the plan. So just be aware of that as well. Now, there are some income thresholds. They have a calculator, and I couldn't even go into the details. I don't even think anybody from VR could go into the details of exactly how it's calculated, because it's basically a calculator, right, of income and your ability to pay for things on whether or not or what percentage of help the VR program will help with. Okay, so one thing that I'd just like to remind folks, if you happen to have adopted a loved one from DFPS, you know, through the state foster system or through the state adoption system, your child goes to school for free in Texas. Most parents don't forget that. I mean, that's a big deal if they go to school for free, but just be aware of that. And those are Texas state schools, and it's not going to be private schools to my knowledge. So so one of the things that you want to think about as far as these scholarships, you know, obviously we talked about academic-based, music-based, sport-based, but there are also a lot of scholarships out there that are from a volunteer perspective. There are also a lot of disease-based scholarships or disability-based scholarships out there that you can check out. We're not a fan of paying for scholarships or paying for more information as it relates to scholarship. There are some slimy websites out there that you can run into, so be careful of those. We're not big fans of that. Of course, you can do what you want, but there's a lot of them out there that you don't have to pay. So just be aware of that. So all of these links, like I said, you're going to get when you get the slides later today with our email. It looks like, okay, we have a question. Did you say if you adopt a child that the child can go to college in Texas for free? And the key to that phrase is if you have adopted a child from the state, adoption agency. So it's not private adoptions. If they were part of the Texas foster system, then yes, they do go to college for free. And you can click on this link and it will take you to the program and it kind of explain how it all works. But kids that are adopted through the Department of Family and Protective Services can go to college for free. That's a big deal. So, and a lot of people forget it, right? So one of the things that we were talking about a moment ago was the ABLE account. So the ABLE account, again, we have entire presentations for this, but the ABLE account is for an individual with a disability who started prior to age 26. Contributions can be made by anyone. You can put up to $16,000 a year annually and an additional $12,880 in 2022 if they are basically working. But the cool thing about the ABLE account is that it's really not taxable. So the earnings on distributions are growing tax-free. And as long as you use the money for a qualified disability expense, you're not going to be taxed or penalized. So that's the key with that. So the one thing that you do need to know, the most important thing on this screen is that at death, states may be able to claim reimbursement for expenses paid by Medicaid, and any additional funds can be distributed to designated beneficiaries or rolled over to other eligible family members. So what does that mean? That means an ABLE account has a Medicaid payback. So if your student is getting, SSI, they're getting Medicaid, state benefits, if there's money left over in the account, then it could go back to the Medicaid payback. And that is another convoluted calculation, and you can Google that and kind of look at that on the Social Security website, Medicaid website for Medicaid paybacks. But there is some, review of that. They're trying to get that thrown out to where there wouldn't be a Medicaid payback on an ABLE account. So from a legal perspective, it hasn't passed, but it's on the table. Okay, so basically what you need to know, this is a list, it's not an all-inclusive list, but this is what you can pay for out of an ABLE account. And the bottom line is if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. So why you might want the funds that you had in a 529C in an ABLE account for your student, especially if your student isn't going to go to college or use that money, is most things can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. It includes tutoring, it includes private school, it includes college, and all of these other things as well. So basically, if your child didn't go to college and needed to use that 529C money for something else, if it was in an ABLE account, you could pull that money out for the betterment of them, achieving a better life for an individual with a disability and not be taxed and penalized. So that's the key, and we can help you guys with that. Okay, so let's talk about accommodations in the offices of disability on the college level. So what I want to kind of talk about here is the offices of disability. I cannot say this enough. They are not created equally. They are not the same. Every college, whether it's a community college or university, are different, and you need to do your homework. So I would call your homework in this order. For me, what we did is we researched the programs that we were interested in and only looked at the schools that had the programs that we were interested in. So that was rule number one: eliminate the schools, right? Because it's not just this endless list of schools that we're looking at. So eliminate the schools that way by narrowing them down to the degree path or the program that you're most interested in for your student. And this can be true for these certificate programs that are out there too. Some certificate programs might be for horticulture. Some certificate programs might be for hospitality or food and beverage or something along those lines, right? So you can eliminate it that way. But then what I would do is I would evaluate the offices of disability and eliminate the additional schools by the simple fact if they have a bad office of disability. So I sound horrible, but when I say they're not created equally, I totally mean that. So some offices of disability, all the schools have them. Some of them are really, really great. They're really big. They're really well staffed. They got a lot of tools and resources that they pay for, the university pays for, the school pays for. Tools and resources such as electronic books, text, voice-to-text recognition software. There's so many different things that are out there that your student may need. Some schools provide it, some schools don't. Some schools have an office of disability that's run by one person, right? So just figure that out. And this is important if you need accommodations on the college level. Research what is necessary to get the accommodations and fill out their application. So all of these offices of disabilities have an application for applying for accommodations, and they have some requirements that you'll have to meet. All of them are a little bit different. Typically, they're wanting to see updated testing. We're talking about IQ testing. We're talking about learning disability testing. Neuropsych testing usually has a component of that in there, and they're usually looking for that testing to be updated in the last 3 to 5 years. So note to moms and dads, do this early. Make sure your testing is updated, or make sure if they will take old testing with a letter from your doctor saying basically that the condition hasn't changed. Ask the university if they'll take that, because some of them will. Some of them are a little bit lighter on their requirements because of the difficulty to have the requirements because of COVID. So you want to just check with them and kind of see where they are. So you want to check those requirements early, be prepared. SAT and ACT, there are accommodations. So if you go to the collegeboard.org for SAT and ACT.org for them, and you type in disability or accommodations, you can go straight to their page for individuals with disability and find out, download the form on what you need to have signed by a doctor to be able to get accommodations for the SAT and the ACT. So do you even need the SAT or ACT? Again, all of the colleges are different. A lot of the universities have relaxed their test choice. Some of them still require the test. So you're going to want to see what they require and when. But if your child is entering in from the community college, or if they're going to a certificate program or a license program, there is no need to put them through the stress of the SAT or the ACT. You do not have to do that. So just be clear on that. So 504s and IEPs don't transfer to the higher education. So they might be willing to take a copy of your 504 or your IEP, and they might review that to see what kind of accommodations that your student was getting, but they are not going to just take that as the gospel and implement those accommodations because of that. Think about power of attorney and FERPA. FERPA, F-E-R-P-A. A power of attorney is a good idea. Power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney is good for all of our kids that are going to college, not just our kids with disability. The FERPA is the form that colleges and universities use all across the U.S. If your child is attending college, you're going to need a FERPA on file. If you intend to interact with the Office of Disability, or if the college or the university, if your student needs help, you're going to need to have that FERPA on file. Also, another thing that I want to mention here is that for families that have guardianship of their student, you better research those programs specifically. There are some programs that will not accept your student if they're under guardianship. They may if they're under partial guardianship, but some programs will emphatically not accept your student if they're under guardianship. So when it comes to work, reasonable accommodation is required if it does not pose undue hardship. So you can kind of think about the Department of Labor there, the Job Accommodation Network. You can check out that website. And then also we like to mention that on the Department of Labor, if your student may not be going to college right now, if we're thinking about maybe they're going to work, there are a whole bunch of registered apprenticeships all across the U.S., not just in Texas, registered apprenticeships that are designed to work with individuals, teach them as they go, and let them be earning as they go as well. So if you haven't heard of that, check out the registered apprenticeship. So moving on to some of the additional scholarships that we want to talk about. The Terry Foundation scholarship is something that this is basically a full ride to 11 Texas public universities. And so it's leadership potential, character, scholastic record, ability, financial need. And so this is where when your student has a powerful story of overcoming and they've given back to their community, they're just kind of an all-around good kid, they've worked hard. This is a scholarship that you're going to want to check out, and you can apply for the scholarship multiple times by applying through the different universities. So if they have it 11 public universities, you could technically apply for it 11 times from the different universities. But this is one that is definitely worth checking out. So these are just the programs. JODI Kosagi is the scholarship program director. The Terry Foundation is based out of Houston, and they're the largest private scholarship donating organization in the United States, and this is for Texas students. So this is worth checking out. And ultimately, this is one that one of my kids got, and we had researched and done a lot of homework on a lot of the scholarships, and we had ended up receiving a lot of scholarships. And again, it wasn't because we were a genius, and it wasn't because we were athletic or musically inclined. It was because over her high school career, she had average grades, average test scores. She was an overcomer with all of her challenges from a disability perspective, but she also gave back to her community and had over 900 service hours throughout the course of her high school. So there's just options out there. So just know about that one. A lot of people don't know. I don't think we put these on the list, but also the Houston Rodeo. All the rodeos all across the state have big scholarships. And so when I say, scholarships and looking at this is again, a job that you're going to partner with your student on. They're not a match for this. We never want you to write their essays. We suggest having your kids write their essays. You can research the essay prompts if they're going to the university. They're online, and like right now is a good time to be researching that, because school is about to get out. And if your child is going to be a rising senior next year, now is the time for them to write the essays if you're planning them to go to college after their senior year, right? So summer is a good time to work on them, because senior year, it is on. When school starts, it is busy. Life is busy. And so if you can get your students working on their essays this summer, then you have them. You have them ready. All they need to be is edited and sent when you're applying for the colleges or the universities, or if you're applying for scholarships. A lot of these scholarships require essays. So research your scholarships early, know the deadlines, when do they open up, when do they close, and you are going to be shocked to know that a lot of these open up early, and they're closed by December 1st or December 15th. So if you're a parent that was thinking you were going to apply for scholarships December of your kid's senior year, you're mistaken, and you will have missed out on a lot of the big ones. So do this research. It's important for you guys to work on this research and this homework now to know these deadlines and have your spreadsheet. But basically what you need to know is when it comes to disability scholarships, there are scholarships out there for basically every disability that you could ever think of or dream of, even the rare ones. There are scholarships for siblings with kids with disabilities. So researching these, kind of checking the links and looking at seeing what's out there. Another place that you might get a good list from is the Child Life Specialist. So if your student goes to, I don't know, Cooks or Texas Children's or any of the Baylor or any of these specialty clinics for whatever their diagnosis is, they typically have a child life specialist, and a child life specialist may also be able to give you a really great list of scholarships that they are aware of. So I say choose wisely and pick the big ones. And that was just, you know, that's what I did. Okay, so choose wisely and pick the big ones. You know, I really didn't care about the $500 scholarship, and I don't want to sound like a snob, but sometimes the $500 scholarship, the application for that is just as long as the $20,000 scholarship or the full ride scholarship. And so if I only have so many hours in the day, I needed to choose the ones that were really going to make a difference or put a dent in the tuition cost for my students. So you can kind of think about that for whatever it's worth. And so these are just, again, some links, and they're not going to be applicable to everybody, but we put a lot of the different, you know, disabilities that people have in there, so you could check those out. And you'll be able to kind of click on any of those links and find any of the additional ones. So books to consider, these are all things that you can buy on Amazon, Colleges That Change Lives. And these are things that really do make a difference in your student. And a lot of the colleges that change lives can be a game changer for kids with disabilities. So check that one out. And of course, there's the FISC Guide to Colleges for 2022. Okay, so a couple of things. I know that we're kind of coming to the end of our meeting for today, but these are just things, if you have attended our webinars in the past, we always have this, you know, kind of last slide of things that should be on your radar when it comes to planning for special needs. When it comes to transitioning, this is just kind of a laundry list of things that you should be thinking about, that should be on your radar. They should be on your list. Maybe you're already on it, you've already done it, you've got things handled, or that you should be looking at them soon if we've got a child that is has either turned 18 or they will soon turn 18. And so, you know, at the risk of being redundant and kind of repetitive on all of these topics, sometimes I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on these, but these are all super, super important. And basically all of these topics can and do have a webinar all to themselves. So that's the thing with what, you know, with these topics, all of the stuff that we're dealing with parents with kids with disabilities, the topics are deep and wide, and so there's a lot to understand. So that's why there are, you know, webinars specifically geared to these topics. So if we talked about something or we hit on something that was, you know, kind of touching the tip of the iceberg on a subject that you need to go deeper on, you can get that from our YouTube channel. We always like to say, meet the team. We work on a collaborative approach at Consolidated Planning Group. We are, again, nationally certified as Social Security advisors and special needs planning academy advisors as well. So we can partner with you as it comes to navigating and planning for the future of your loved ones with special needs, and specifically tailor those plans and those recommendations specifically to you and kind of the steps that you're on. A lot of the families that come to us, they already have an advisor, they have an advisor in place, but their advisor doesn't have any background in special needs. They need a little bit of help on the special needs side. So we're certainly happy to partner with you any way that we can. We offer free personalized consultations. That QR code will take you to a calendar link. So if you're interested in talking or going deeper on any of the topics that we talked about today as it relates to specifically to your student, we're certainly happy to partner with you on that. So having said that, we just got a couple of minutes left. Does anybody have any additional questions that they have or that they would like me to answer? Give it just a second here. Okay. Well, I would just like to say thank you, everyone, for attending. It's certainly been my pleasure. Again, you will get an email today with the slides, with the recording, with the contact information for the Student Hireability Navigator as well. And then again, the Student Hireability Navigator that is on our site, she's actually the Houston area, but you can call any one of them and they're going to get you connected to your navigator in your area, because I know we've got people from all across the state on here today. So certainly been my pleasure, everyone, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Take care.